I Am Enough by Grace Byers.
All Are Welcome by Alexandrian Penfold.
Skin Like Mine by Latasha L. Perry.
Ven a mi casa by Dr. Seuss.
Raise your hand if any of these books ring a bell for you. These books are elementary level books. These are books that promote diversity and inclusion, either by teaching students to be comfortable in their own skin or teaching students kindness and empathy towards their peers. In September 2021, these books, along with many others, were banned in our elementary, middle, and high schools at Central York School District in York, PA.
Over 300 books were banned. These books were by and about Black, Indigenous, and people of color authors, creators, and communities. These books were used to teach and promote a more equitable and more inclusive school environment.
The conversation of more diversity in schooling started over a year ago, in April 2021, when I told 10 board members lined up on my computer screen with straight faces and blazers that my schooling had led me to reject a part of my identity. I wanted to emphasize the importance of diversity education because the lack that I saw in my 12 years of schooling. I rehashed over deeply buried memories, all for the hopes that a young child of color wouldn't look at themselves as an outsider. At that meeting, all I could think was enough was enough. After years of attempted assimilation and living for the convenience of others, I finally wanted to take some authority over my life and what affected it. Throughout the years, I had let experiences, opportunities, and my life slip away as I lived in constant fear of judgment, and more so, in constant fear that I would make those around me uncomfortable. I couldn't let this happen to another generation. And so I talked about how the Indian food my mom packed for me for lunch was always met with glaring eyes and comments about how disgusting and smelly it was. I talked about how wearing my Indian hair oils designed for my coarse, curly Indian hair texture came with comments saying the same. I talked about how girls didn't want to sit with me on the bus, how my cultural attire was ridiculed, and how I would hear various ironic insults like "go back to your country" on a daily basis. Painfully, every single thing I said at that meeting was met with skepticism. And I was fed with the false hope that change was in action. I waited for diversity education to be a pillar of curriculum like I had suggested and like I had been told it was going to be. I waited and waited and waited. I waited almost a year until I found out about this ban from a secondary local news source. I had been naive, and I knew I would never make the same mistake again.
Throughout the years, I was told that spending a lot of time on slavery, the civil rights movement, and the Civil War wasn't necessary, because those events happened long ago, and that America has learned from it. Well, the fact that slavery is considered it shows me America has more work to be done. In my elementary years, I shied away from wearing my natural curly hair because many of the characters I saw on TV had straight, loose, or wavy hair. This was a similar feeling to Edha, feeling isolated and in constant fear of the judgment we would receive from our peers. It would have been crucial to have more representation within classrooms. And now the vicious cycle was continuing in front of my eyes. I knew I had to stand, I knew I had to stand up for what was right, but I was scared at first because I didn't want anything to affect my graduation or my senior year of high school. However, something had to be done. This book ban was not only affecting children's self-image, but more personally for me, African-American students' self-image. I didn't want minority students growing up in a district where they feel like their culture doesn't matter because no one in school decided to talk about their students' unique differences. I didn't want African Americans falling to the default thinking that all culture doesn't matter because no one in the school decided to recognize it or even celebrate it. So action had to be taken immediately.
Our journey consisted of many sleepless nights, more than the average high schooler already has. After the ban, we planned our first protest. At this protest, we expected 5. We expected 5 students to wake up at least an hour earlier than regular school time to come outside the school and hold signs saying, "Education is not indoctrination and my voice matters." We got 50. The next day, 60, and the numbers kept rising. Kids showed up. Kids showed up for something that they believed in, and it was the start of a movement. Of course, there was a lot more work to be done. The ban was still in place. There was a lot of criticism from the community, and us ourselves were unconfident in our abilities, but we had taken action. For us students, protesting a decision made by our school board was a daunting task, and we were never really sure if we were taking steps in the right direction. What if we were going to be perceived as quote-unquote bad students? And what would happen to the students and the teachers that supported us if we lost?
From September 2021 to now present day, what started out as local news attention soon grew into national and even international news. We were on the daily talk time show of Kelly Clarkson. We were covered by CNN News reports, and we even got a chance to speak at the Pennsylvania State Capitol at a press conference, where we met Tom Wolf, the governor of Pennsylvania, and down the line, we met Bob Casey, a PA senator. And our advocacy is still happening today. Just this past week, I was at US Congress to give a speech at a congressional hearing about the importance of diversity in education and my own personal K-12 schooling. But because of this news attention, our social media following grew and grew and grew more. And with every news article ending with, "We are pending a statement from the Central School District," the reversal of this ban seemed much more realistic. The board was intimidated. This was shown that since our words and thoughts behind closed doors wouldn't take much effect, that our public and vocal action would. And on September 20th of 2021, the Central School Board reversed the book ban. And the books were returned to the libraries, where they should be in the first place. And us at PARU, the Panther Anti-Racist Union, tried to ensure the books will stay there. At PARU, we have 60+ members in attendance at our weekly meetings, where we focus on education. Education leads to growth, change of mindset, and perspective. We focus on education with nonviolence training seminars, books about race, and most importantly, healthy conversations on every student's story, because every story deserves to be heard. This movement was monumental in our community. Students and staff now saw that change was possible, and change soon grew into our school curriculum, and almost an entire new school board came into place. In November 2021, we had our local school board election. Over 80,000 ballots were cast. Something we've never heard of, something we never saw of. Students were engaged, families were engaged, staff was engaged, and people from all over the world and nation were now looking at our movement with anticipation. However, our sacrifice paid off, but not without hardship.
In news reports like the CNN and New York Times, life can look really glamorous. All those reports show is how we came together to successfully reverse a book ban. And while this is true, it is somewhat incomplete. Before our group faced any success, we faced much hardship and obstacle as well. Before we were heroes championing equity, we were students and teachers trying to do what was right, but with little support.
Before the fame, there is failure. In September of 2021, an email from our previous school board came out, this one, to be precise, saying that the board would stay stagnant in the decision to keep the ban in place, and that the books would stay out of the libraries. When we first read this email, we were devastated, to say the least. It felt like all our hard work had went to nothing. It felt like we were unrecognized. It felt like a punch in the gut. But because of the unwavering support of family, friends, students, staff, and alumni, we kept going. We kept persisting through long nights and academic pressure and even glaring looks in the hallway. We kept going because we knew we were part of something bigger than ourselves, and we were a part of the greater good. Because we kept going, schooling in our district will be remembered for years to come, and we hope to inspire others with our story.
Sadly, this tragedy of banning books is spreading across the country fast. In Carroll Independent School District in South Lake, Texas, books have similarly been banned. In Bucks County, Pennsylvania, school districts have gone so far as to ban words like equity. In Washington state, LGBTQ+ books have been pulled out of a middle school library. And these issues are passing the school realm and entering the governmental. Florida has recently doubled down on an anti-critical race theory bill, which bans public schools from speaking about racial issues if it causes discomfort on the base of race, sex, or national origin.
It is disheartening to see these book bans travel across the nation, and action needs to be taken immediately to mitigate these tragedies from happening. It is sad to see fellow peers shy away from speaking their voice in fear of what others might say or in fear of what others might do. But if you have anything to take away from our advocacy, it's that if you see something, say something. Be the change in your community. Be the change in your education. Because you deserve an education that reflects the ever-growing diversity that is happening around our world today.
Think about the future just on the horizon for younger children. Think about how more representation in schooling would have affected your younger self and those around you. I fear that in society today, far too many people have a stunted self-growth because of a lack of self-love in their childhood. It is possible to break this cycle, and it is possible to change education for the better. It starts now. The ugly truth about standing up for what you believe in is that you can easily be pushed to sit down. When you are on the forefront of a social justice movement in a place like York, PA, criticism comes from all directions. However, if you look closely, there will always be people. There will always be people to support what you're doing, especially when you think there is no one. As we became more apparent with our message, the community supported us in overwhelming ways. Alumni donated thousands of dollars, and a local community member set up a book distribution at which thousands of books were donated and distributed to community members for free. So now, not only were these books in the hands of us students, but they were in the homes of community members, so they could see the diversity and the innocence that these books held. This book distribution was pivotal, and not only showing us students that people cared, but showing the community that immediate change was in action. 5,000 books. 5,000 books were donated within 30 minutes.
As students, we often have the loudest voices, but we often doubt ourselves. We did. And we're here to tell you that your voice matters and your opinion matters. If your original thoughts and actions don't take precedence the way you want them to, don't be afraid to take a step further by peacefully protesting or even by showing up en masse to community meetings.
Because we protested, there are going to be generations of younger students that are going to have access to a fully equitable and representative education. Remember that when you stand up for what you believe in, you are not only affecting the community around you, but you are affecting generations of younger students to come, the ones that we all used to be. Thank you.